the dawn in the battle's chill. Flags unfurled, we march uphill. Hearts like fire, unbreakable will. Voices united, echoing still. For freedom we stand and are unmet. This long and struggle our spirits set. Hands clasped, time, strength unspent. In unity we find our lament. Under starry skies our dreams ignite. Facing the dark with fearless light. Though shadows fall, they cannot light a love for land, our fighting might. For freedom we stand and are unmet. The storm and struggle our spirits set. Hands clasped, tight, strength unspent. In unity we find our lament. Under starry skies our dreams ignite. Facing the dark with fearless light. Though shadows fall, they cannot light a love for land, our fighting might.
Well, you know, y'all already know how it is over here. Okay? I am Joseph Prose, the host of the Common Sense Pros and Cons podcast. And there's only one con to common sense, and it is you will be angry. Okay, we in this one today, all right, we're gonna go over some of the bullshit with the left. Okay? I mean, typically that's what we do over here. But man, you know, I woke up this morning, I started reading some news, and then I chose violence, okay? Cause it's it's not it's not even like, yes, people telling lies is irritating, right? Obviously. But what's more irritating is people fucking believing the lies, right? That's the issue. And what's up, Sylph? How you doing? I've been informed that Defiance will return. There's nothing they can say or do that will ruin today. X Defiance? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I think I saw earlier too that you started streaming, right? Yeah, I wasn't able to catch that because I ended up just taking a nap like shortly after you fucking started streaming. But you know, we're gonna go over some stuff mainly concerning some random shit like Supreme Court rejecting a religious case, but mainly like this immigration incident right here, right? With this dude named Mahmoud Khalil, right? Fucking beard hairs, bro. Um, because this shit is actually it's a big deal, and this is actually what a lot of people have been looking for, and rightly so, right? And this is the way that it actually does work in this country, and it actually has worked. But for so long, liberals, unelected bureaucrats, liberals, right? A majority of them in the government have defied actual precedents for so long. They've established a new precedence. And that's the issue with kind of how our country operates, right? This country, no nation should operate based off of precedents, okay? Because when you operate based off of precedents, sometimes that shit's antiquated, okay? Precedents should be taken out of the equation, and it should just be what the fuck the law says, okay? Because what's the point in having a law if somebody sets the precedents that you disobey the law, right? It literally makes no sense whatsoever. And that this you know, the reason I say that is because that is exactly what the left that is the precedence they have created surrounding many contentious, in quotations, issues that a lot of people face today, right? Like illegal immigration. They're the ones who have created a precedence for to try to act like illegal immigration and the children of illegal immigrants, or immigrants for that matter, are by default citizens. No, the fuck they weren't. No, the fuck they aren't. Right? You really believe, okay, for people on the left, because they believe that the United States is the worst country to ever be, and we're the ones who've done the only terrible things ever, right? You really think at the height of racism in this country, to the point of there being a civil war, and then immediately following that, right, the amendments introduced to actually integrate former slaves in into American society by giving them citizenship. You really think the people surrounding those amendments were like, "Oh yes, and we also meant illegal immigrants." Right? No, fuck no they didn't. Right? That's a stupid fucking belief to have. If you think that, you can't on one hand say the country, like the United States, was the most racist and we had slavery and all this other shit, but apparently it was super progressive at the height of slavery too, right? To where that they were talking about, oh yeah, illegal immigrants can come into this country whenever the fuck they want. It's perfectly fine. And on top of that, then they can give birth and then those kids are citizens. What kind of logic does that fucking follow? Right? Also, it was just me playing Sabak, so you didn't miss much besides me fucking winning. I don't know why, but I've spent so much time with you whenever I read your messages. Like, when I'm not reading them out loud or something like that, I read them like how I feel you would say them. Okay, so we're gonna get into this, right? So there was some grown ass man named Mahmoud Khalil at the University of Columbia, okay, protesting in support of Hamas, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to bring up terrible shit that Israel has done to the Palestinians, fine, but you better also acknowledge the terrible shit that Palestinians have done to Israelis, right? Or Jews. You better, like, if we want to sit down and have a conversation about Muslims being oppressed, you better be ready to have a conversation about Jews being oppressed and about Christians being oppressed. And you better be ready to have a conversation about why the fuck there are so many more Islamic terrorist attacks across the Western world than there are any other kind of attack, right? So Mahmoud Khalil, who's a green card holder, right? He has a green card. He's a permanent resident, okay? Which um I don't know how the fuck he would be a permanent resident. Uh because I heard that he was married, but I don't know how long he's been married. I don't know, right? But he supports Hamas. And I just want y'all to understand that Hamas is linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. In even Egypt and Saudi Arabia recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, right? Which means that there are other Arab Muslim nations that recognize Hamas, an Arab Muslim terrorist organization, as a terrorist organization. Not only that, Hamas is the government of Palestine. So there's either two options there. They were either justly elected by the Palestinian people, which means the Palestinian people openly advocated for, endorsed, and continue to endorse terrorism and terrorist organizations, or you come out and say Hamas is fucking terrible and they're holding the Palestinian people hostage through threat of force. Right? Those are your two fucking options. There is no secret third option. Oh my God, they're such nice people and they're resisting oppression. Look, I don't care. I don't care what your motivation is to commit terroristic acts. It doesn't make you any less of a terrorist. When the intent behind what you do is to spread terror amongst civilians, right? Local populace. When all of your actions are to spread terror, to enact your political, economic, religious fucking agenda, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if all of your actions are, the intent behind them is to spread terror, you are a fucking terrorist. If you achieve your objectives through spreading terror, you are a terrorist. Period. That's like, English is a very specific language, and this is why fucking Shakespeare expanded English so drastically, is because the English language is extremely specific. This is why in a ton of other languages, they don't have words that translate to a lot of our words. Or they have a word, but it's generalized, right? Like, we have a fuck ton of different ways to talk about the beauty of something, right? Beautiful, gorgeous, pretty, whatever the fuck you want to say, okay? In a lot of other languages, they don't. They just have like one word that roughly translates to beautiful or something like that, right? English is a very specific language. Definitions mean something. Fuck, second. No, you're not second. I don't know if you could see the chat, but Sylv jumped in the chat and he was the first one to comment, but he said second. And then I was fucking around saying I was first, right? So actually, in fact, you are first, Matt. So all this is besides the point, right? Mahmoud Khalil's actions as opposite of free speech, says Cornell, anti-Israel mob, not a surprise. Okay. Let's read an earlier article, I guess, about it. Or let's hop into this real quick from Caroline.
The last question here on Mahmoud Khalil. Does the administration
on Mahmoud Khalil, right?
believe that it needs to charge a green card holder with a crime to be eligible for deportation?
Well, in fact, Secretary Rubio reserves the right to revoke the visa of Mahmoud Khalil, and I'm glad you brought this up. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke a green card or a visa for individuals who serve or are adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States of America. And Mahmoud Khalil was an individual who was given the privilege of coming to this country to study at one of our nation's finest universities and colleges. And he took advantage of that opportunity, of that privilege, by siding with terrorists. Hamas terrorists who have killed innocent men, women, and children. This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda, flyers with the logo of Hamas. That is what the behavior and activity that this individual engaged in.
And I'm just gonna say, if you are passing out flyers with the logo of Hamas, you are aiding and abetting, right? And there's no place for that in my fucking country. Thank you very much, right? So, for everyone who doesn't know, the reason that all these fucking protests are happening is because Palestine and Hamas wanted to fuck around and find out with Israel. And October 7th of 2023, they launched a sneak attack on Israel. They slaughtered over 1,200 almost completely civilians, right? By proxy, because of how Israel works, right? With mandated service. Some of them were like off-duty soldiers or police officers or something like that. But almost exclusively, all of them were innocent civilians. Then Hamas proceeded to take 250 hostages. And Arabs all over the world, there's videos of Israel getting these hostages back, of these hostages being beaten emaciated from being starved and dehydrated. They have stories talking about being beaten or raped or something like that, right? And I even had a Muslim Arab tell me that he thinks it's perfectly acceptable for people to take hostages. And he claims to be all about peace and all this other kind of dumb shit that came out of his mouth. Right? You can't be someone who supports peace or you want to talk about oppression and then support taking hostages. That's fucking insane. Like that's clearly hypocritical. But that's unfortunately the reality of Muslims is they do not practice what they preach, and it's rules for thee, not for me when it comes to Islam. Okay? So whatever, because of that there's been a war in Palestine. Israel's been pushing their shit in because they wanted to fuck around and find out. I don't care. They could really just kill each other back and forth. I don't care. That's what's going to happen because the Palestinian people are extremely aggressive, and the history of Israel has been so tumultuous that it's made the Israelis a very high octane nation as well. Okay, so now you guys have the background. Ever since then, Islamic extremist supporters in this country have been protesting all across the U.S. at major college campuses. And all of these college campuses, for some odd reason, seem to get hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars from Middle Eastern countries for like Islamic studies and stuff like that. Huh, surprise. So then there's this dude named Mahmoud Khalil who's here on a green card, right? And he's been granted this green card because he's married to an American citizen, right? And he was going to a university, Columbia University in New York, and instead of actually following through on his education, he feels the need to protest, which is not something that he actually has a right to from whatever fucking country he comes from. Right? Most other countries, there is no enshrined right to protest whatsoever. So he wants to come here and abuse what's being afforded to him by our culture because our culture is better than most fucking other people's cultures. Okay? And he's on a green card. And some people want to argue that he has the right. I don't think so. I'm sorry. I don't think so. Protections are applied to all kind of people who come to this country. I don't believe in universal fucking rights, right? I don't. I'm sorry. Yes, I do believe in the fact that we have God-given rights, and that's fine. Those are God-given. You can't take those away, and no man on earth has the ability to take those away. But having rights does not mean that you are immune from consequences of said rights. And if you come here to this country and use our rights to then espouse anti-American shit, I'm sorry, get the fuck out of here. You're gone. I don't care. If you do not actually support freedom of speech for everybody, you do not get freedom of speech. Okay? Unless you are someone who doesn't support freedom of speech for people who don't support freedom of speech, right? And you can say that's hypocritical because that's how I operate now. I used to be someone who believes in freedom of speech. I disagree with you, but freedom of speech. No. If you seek to oppress other people's freedom of speech, predominantly this is a big thing with leftists, right? They want to talk about freedom of speech but not actually support fucking freedom of speech. But try to make it out that, but they always believe in freedom of speech when it comes to theirs, but they don't believe in freedom of speech when it comes to yours. I'm sorry, then you don't get freedom of speech. I will not defend your right to freedom of speech. You won't defend mine. I won't defend yours. Reciprocity, right? Like, you know, there's a reason. All right. So he's here protesting, supporting Hamas, leading campaigns coordinated to attack Jewish students or terrorize Jewish students. Get the fuck out of here. Like that's all I have to say. Right? Now let's come over here. Jewish student slams Mahmoud Khalil's actions as opposite of free speech, says Cornell anti-Israel mom.
To bring him back, we're seeking to have him released, and we're going to do that whether it's in federal court or an immigration court. There are limits.
Immigration court is federal court.
To how long a person can be held in immigration court, but frankly, that's irrelevant because we are going to ask for him to be released as expeditiously as possible, and we will do that in any court that will hear us.
Yeah, the government has basically admitted that they're punishing him for his views that are contrary to the government's views.
Wow. Isn't that why everybody gets punished? Isn't that... No shit, right? You break the law, but you don't feel you're breaking the law. But in contrast to the government, whether it's state or federal, you broke the law, so you get punished for that? No shit. No shit. Look, if we're gonna talk, if leftists like this fucking cheeseburger eating, living in his mom's basement, fucking balding fuck wants to say with this veiled language and wants to play the victim kind of deal, right? Oh, the government's punishing him for his views. Yeah, well, that's kind of how all societies work, is they punish people for their views. Terrorists think it's okay to terrorize people and kill people based on their views, and somebody has a problem with that based on their views. So then someone punishes someone based on their views or the opposition of their fucking views. No shit, right? So, and you know what? You can say my argument, yeah, like, come on, I'm just kind of being an asshole about it. No shit, because this guy's being an asshole about it. He doesn't want to be up front, so I'm not going to be up front, right? Hell yeah, you get freedom of speech if you protect it for everyone. Exactly. If you don't defend other Americans' constitutional rights, I don't believe the constitutional rights or protections extend to you, right? If we want to have disagreements and different worldviews and stuff like that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're supposed to be Americans, and we're all supposed to adhere to the Constitution and believe in the Constitution. And we can even have differences on that, right? Like you don't believe in the Second Amendment, but it's in the Constitution, so you support it. That okay, all right, then we have no issue, right? I support freedom of speech. I hate your leftist fucking viewpoints because you're completely irrational. You're hypocritical. You go back on everything whenever it doesn't suit you. And sure, you can argue that everybody kind of does that, right? But the left is egregious with that shit. The left right now, for being upset with Donald Trump effectively shutting down the government, like Donald Trump is reducing the government. So the Democrat response to being upset about Donald Trump shutting down the government is for them to not vote on this continuing resolution in order to shut down the government. So they want to punish the government for shutting down the government by doing exactly what the government wants and shutting down the government. Because they are so fucking over emotional and so like erratic that they don't even begin to transcend any line of fucking logic. It's insane.
And that's just an obvious piece of authoritarian logic.
Notice, why would he be saying authoritarian logic? It's not authoritarian. No fascistic or authoritarian or monarchy or any other form of government, right? How they're trying to call Trump a dictator or some shit. You don't get into government and begin to reduce the size and the power of government, and you're a fascist. It's literally impossible, because the whole government structure behind a fascistic dictator or a tyrant or something like that gives all the power to a sole individual. What? You can't get into government and reduce the size of government and begin to take power away from the government and give it back to the states? and then also be a dictator. Like, it's impossible, right?
That we cannot tolerate as long as we live in a democracy. It's totally
We don't live in a
unacceptable
democracy.
for
We live in
him
a constitutional
and for others.
republic.
The government is claiming, and this is really a question for the government. The government is claiming that because of the time he filed a habeas corpus petition in this court, he was already in New Jersey. They had already moved him to New Jersey as part of their plan, again, to move him 1,000 miles away to Louisiana, to take him away from this court, from his lawyers, from his support network. And of course...
Wow. Huh. It's almost like the federal government did that to 1,500 January 6 protesters. Took them out of everywhere across the country that they lived in and brought them to D.C. that voted 93% in favor of Democrat candidates because D.C.'s completely unbiased, right? Right? Took them out of their districts, out of their support networks, away from their family, moved them thousands of miles across the country to D.C. in order to prosecute them in D.C. in a completely biased jurisdiction. Huh, interesting.
The goal in all of this is to silence not just Mahmoud, but to silence anyone who will speak in defense of Palestinian lives and rights. And clearly...
Crazy. What the fuck are you doing in the United States protesting for some other country's rights? That doesn't fucking make any sense. How about you go to Israel or you go to Palestine and you protest for their rights there? How about you protest against Hamas to relinquish their control over the Palestinian state so maybe the Palestinian people can elect a government that's not getting its people slaughtered because it wants to fuck around and find out. Anyways, I don't care to keep listening to this fucking dude, but anyways, federally detained Columbia University agitator Mahmoud Khalil's case is not about free speech, a Jewish student told the Post after his school, Cornell, was the latest to be caught up in disruptive anti-Israel protests. Sam Friedman, a 21-year-old junior at Cornell's College of Engineering, was at the Ithaca, New York campus's Bailey Hall on Monday night when a mob shouted down the Israeli and Palestinian speakers who had gathered for the event entitled Pathways to Peace. But despite the host's noble intentions and the participation of both sides in the conflict, including former Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni and former Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority Salam Fayyad, Monday's talk quickly descended into chaos. So this was literally a summit between both representatives or former representatives of both sides of this historic conflict. Right? Sitting down in a spirit of cooperation to discuss whatever the fuck they were discussing. And anti-Israel fucking agitators like Mahmoud, right, wants to disrupt it and shut it down because he doesn't want peace. Because the Palestinian people and people who support Palestine, they don't want peace. They want the complete and total eradication of Israel. That's what they want. I'm a big free speech advocate. I think free speech is really important. And what these people did at Cornell is the opposite of free speech, Friedman told the Post. They intentionally block people from speaking freely. No shit, because that's what the left does. They claim to have free speech to oppress other people's free speech. The organizers of the protests and walkouts at Cornell Students for Justice in Palestine now face suspension as a registered campus group, the college's interim president Michael Kotlikoff confirmed. It comes as fury has erupted on many campuses across the U.S. following the arrest of Columbia graduate Mahmoud Khalil on Saturday by ICE agents for his role in anti-Israel campus protests where sick flyers glorifying Hamas were distributed. The Trump administration believes the U.S. has legal justification to deport Khalil 30, a green card-holding Palestinian who received his graduate degree from the Ivy League school in December. So he's already graduated, but he's back on campus, right, on private property, leading harassment campaigns. It's a position Friedman supports. Jesus Christ. All I have to say is if you fucking Americans in this country think Middle Eastern culture is so amazing, why don't you go live in the Middle East? Middle Easterners in the United States are night and day difference between actual Middle Eastern culture and how their societies are run. Because the same liberals in the United States who support Middle Eastern culture do everything in their power every single day to attack Christianity and claim because Trump has a relationship with God, he's turning this country into a theocracy, right? And they're like, "Oh my God, separation of church and state." Go live in the Middle East. Every single Middle Eastern nation is a theocracy. It is literally a theocratically run government in every Middle Eastern country, because Islam is not just a religion. It specifically highlights how it should govern its people, which are Muslims. So every Islamic nation on planet Earth is a theocracy because the Quran dictates how the society is run at the end of the day, right? That's why call to prayer is a thing in fucking basically all Middle Eastern countries, right? It's a big thing, and it's not just the culture. It's not like church bells ringing or something like that. It's fucking offered up by the government, right, to ensure that it's fucking happening. Go live in the Middle East. In the case of Khalil being deported, this is not about free speech. It's about material support for terrorism. Freeman said it's not about free speech when you're vandalizing and destroying stuff. Exactly. This week, Cornell University was one of 6 Ivy League universities featured on a list of more than 60 colleges under scrutiny from Trump's Department of Education for alleged rampant anti-Semitism. Other elite institutions named and shamed include Brown, Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, as well as local schools, blah, 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 blah. Man, Christy Noem's a pretty woman. Freeman was not surprised by the announcement of the probe into the campus anti-Semitism at Cornell, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, right? I mean, all I have to say about this is you have a green card. And when you're on a green card, you are being afforded a temporary privilege by the U.S. federal government and extension the American people to come to this country and live in this country and work in this country. You know, like, you're being afforded the privilege. You are not given a right. You're not given a right. It's a fucking privilege being afforded to you. And maybe what you should do is wait until you become an American citizen before you start fucking running your mouth and doing crazy shit. Because guess what? Like, there's worse repercussions for actual American citizens who are doing shit like Mahmoud is what Mahmoud is doing, right? And I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm sick and tired of conservatives defending this shit. No, fuck this dude. He wants to see our country destroyed to where you don't have any rights. That is what the left wants. So guess what? I am done supporting their rights. I'm done. I don't care. I'm done. Fuck that. And guess what? For this dumb bitch and this dumb bitch right here, oh my God, let's get into it right here. Oh shit, what is this? Oh my God, www.govinfo.gov. Oh shit, oh my God. What? How did this get on my screen? Holy shit. Right? Are y'all ready for this? Subsection I, section 222 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. After the issuance of a visa or other documentation to any alien, the consular officer or the Secretary of State may at any time in his discretion. You know what that means? That means that the consular officer or the Secretary of State can just be like, I don't like you. Your shit's revoked. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen, right? Because American culture typically has higher standards than that. But that at their discretion, the consular officer, right? There's consular officers all over the fucking world because there's consulates and consular sections of embassies in almost every country on planet Earth, right? The consular officer or the Secretary of State may at any time in his discretion revoke such visa or other documentation. Notice of such revocation shall be communicated to the Attorney General, and such revocation shall invalidate the visa or other documentation from the date of issuance, provided that carriers or transportation companies and masters, commanding officers, agents, owners, charterers, or consignees and reliance on such visas or other documentation, unless they receive due notice of such revocation prior to the alien's embarkation. There shall be no means of judicial review, including review pursuant to section 2241 of Title 28 United States Code or any other habeas corpus provision in sections 1361 and 1651 of such title, of a revocation under this subsection, except in the context of a removal proceeding if such revocation provides the sole ground for removal under section 237A 1B. Okay, and I'll just tell you right now what this subsection is right here. What that talks about, okay, is the fact that if that someone's green card is being revoked and they are then to be deported, and the reason for them being deported is only because their green card's being revoked, then there is a form of judicial review. That is the only context in which there is judicial review of revocation of green card statuses. So it is potential that Mahmoud receives a due process for this revocation. I don't believe he should, because I don't think that the revocation of his green card is just to revoke his green card, right? But that's what they're gonna claim, because they other charges as of yet haven't been filed against him, right? So there might be judicial review. Personally, his green card should be revoked and he should be deported back to whatever country he came from. That's it. Simple as that. You want to come to this country, you want to fucking reap the fruits of our labor, of our forefathers and stuff like that, then you better pay homage to our forefathers and to our fucking nation. And if you're spouting anti-American fucking rhetoric, you're supporting terrorist organizations that have the stated mission of destroying the United States and destroying Israel, right? I'm not too focused on the Israel part right now, right? Because that's not my country. My country is the United States, right? That is their mission statement, is to kill Americans, to destroy the United States. That's part of the charter of Hamas. Okay? Then I'm sorry, you're getting the fuck out of here. I think he should be charged with aiding terrorism. The DOJ needs to come out and press charges against him. They need to validate him passing out pro Hamas fucking forms or whatever. Press charges against him and say that's the underlying reason for the revocation of the green card. So there's two options here. Either we go to court and then you basically end up in prison for charges of terrorism or aiding terrorism or terrorist organizations or whatever it may be, or you get deported back to your country. Getting deported back to your country is probably the best option, right? But this is the thing, right? I don't come to y'all out of my ass. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of fucking political shit. Okay? Kill that bot. Do it. Do it. I need to make you a mod, Sylv. That's what I need to do. Let me get this fucking bot out of here real quick. There you go. Deported. All right. So, Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 222, subsection I, literally gives the authority to the Secretary of State or a consular officer to, at their discretion, revoke a visa. There is no judicial review for the revocation process, with the exception of the sole ground for removal is, or for deportation is removing the green card or revoking the green card. Okay? But all the judicial review is that a judge is basically reviewing, like, okay, why did you so, because they're not reviewing that, they're going to review why the green card was revoked, but the actual matter at hand in which the judge is warranted is deportation. Okay? So the judge is like, why are we deporting this individual? And the government goes, we are seeking to deport this individual because we revoked his green card due to X, Y, and Z. And then depending on the judge is like, okay, it seems that was it's warranted behavior or not, kind of deal. DOJ official says she was fired after opposing the restoration of Mel Gibson's gun rights. I hate to break it to you. If you are a federal employee and you are refusing orders from your supervisors, then that's grounds for termination. Why is that so fucking hard to understand? Is restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights, is that unethical? Is that immoral? Right? Did the DOJ order this woman to go kill somebody? No. Right? Because even in the military, right? This woman's not in the military. She probably wouldn't ever be able to make it in the military. Okay? You can refuse unlawful orders in the government, right? Even in the military, you can refuse unlawful orders. If your superior officer in the military is telling you to gun down civilians, you can refuse it. You can 100% refuse it. Okay? And I'm talking about, like, okay, because I'm not an advocate for refusing orders predominantly in the military. Why? Because you're in the fucking military and there's very serious shit going on around you, right? But there are very cut and dry instances of where a default refusal of the order is warranted. Gunning down civilians is one of them, right? Gunning down the Marine to your left and right. That's one of them, right? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay? It has to be a legitimately unlawful order, not an order you don't like. That's not how it works. And that's what this woman did, who worked for the Department of Justice, an executive agency. She was ordered by her commanding officer to go ahead and restore Mel Gibson's gun rights. Okay? You can, but you don't have to. They were in direct violation of Order 66. They were in direct violation of Order 69. Giggity, right? Look at this. The former U.S. pardon attorney Elizabeth G. Oyer was terminated Friday after she opposed restoring actor Mel Gibson's rights to carry a gun. Her spokesperson and two Justice Department officials familiar with the matter told NBC News. Notice how the left, we're going to start highlighting this. Notice how the left never gives you a name for who's the spokesperson or who are these other two Justice Department officials. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you aren't giving names, I don't give a fuck what they have to say. I don't believe that they actually said anything unless there is more evidence provided. Right? But so she was a U.S. pardon attorney, which means that she worked for the DOJ in the pardon attorney's office of the DOJ. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know why she was involved in the first place, because they're not talking about giving a pardon to Mel Gibson. That might be what it was, is that they were offering up a pardon to Mel Gibson. That isn't up to the pardon attorney to determine whether or not it occurs. It's not. I'm sorry that like people who work in the pardon office of the DOJ, their entire job is to facilitate pardons. That's it. They're not the ones who get to dictate who is pardoned. That power squarely belongs with the chief executive, the president of the United States. So she is refusing lawful orders from her superiors to restore the gun rights of Mel Gibson. A spokesperson for Warriors said that she was not told why she was terminated, but that because of the sequence of events, she believes her refusal to carry out a request from officials in the Deputy Attorney General's office to add Gibson's name to a list of people to have their gun rights restored may have played a role. I'm going to tell y'all right now, I don't think this is the thing, right? Leftists are the ones who push to have convicted felons or criminals, right, have their rights restored after completion of their sentence. And I actually agree with that, because you lose a lot of your rights, okay? Like when you get convicted of crimes or something like that in this country, it fucks you over. It fucks people over. And this is exactly why a lot of people who commit crimes are repeat offenders. Because after they pay the price for committing their crime, they are then socially, societally, right? That's what socially is. Society, social, like it's the same fucking thing. They're socially ostracized for the rest of their life. So they can't find gainful employment. Okay? They can't get other shit because of that. They should have their rights restored. That's the whole point. The whole point of fucking getting a sentence passed down to you for a crime you committed is so that you can pay the price of the crime you committed. And then from there, you're supposed to be square, right? You're supposed to be a fucking fresh start. That's the way it should be. But leftists don't actually support that belief. Okay? Now, it's very few people in this nation who should have their rights stripped away from them indefinitely, right? People who murder people, okay? They shouldn't be released from prison in the first place, right? I actually believe in the death penalty and they should receive that instead. But, prison is supposed to be about reformation. Yeah, no, it's actually not. They try to paint that picture nowadays. It's not, right? So this is why it pisses me off that they started renaming prisons correctional facilities. It doesn't correct anything. It doesn't correct anything, right? Like, let me put it this way. People who have to go to AA or people who are addicted to certain substances and stuff like that, they're specifically told not to be around people who drink or who do X drugs or some shit like that. Why? Because when you surround yourself with people with certain types of behavior, you then begin to typically partake in that behavior, right? I'm an individual who doesn't do that. I've always been an individual who doesn't do that. Okay. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't do any of that shit. I don't dip or anything like that. And the entire time I was in the Marine Corps, I was told by other Marines that it was really cool that I was actually like that, because a lot of them started drinking or smoking or picked up a bad habit or some shit like that because of being in the Marine Corps or whatever. Because a lot of people in the military smoke or drink or, some people do drugs, and sometimes they get filtered out. Sometimes they fucking don't, unfortunately. But so when you take someone and you stick them around a bunch of other criminals, and then after they get out, right, they picked up skills, they picked up knowledge while in jail or while in prison, and now they're being socially ostracized, and they can't get their life back on track. Well, now they just have a bigger fucking skill set. Like it's not, prison actually isn't about reformation. Prison, like it's about paying the price for your crime. Okay? Because the process is considered to be reformative, because it used to be in this country that when you got out of prison, okay, that you paid the price for your crime. And it's the same thing. And why is this, right? Because our country's built on Christian values, okay? And when you repent, or whatever you want to chalk it up to, Jesus died for the sin of man, okay? And we're built on Christian values, okay? So you go to prison, you pay the price, you are reformed. That's how our society, that's what we used to fucking believe, right? That's what we used to fucking believe. And as we should still believe that, right? Stop ostracizing people. Give them a chance to come back to society. Not pedophiles though. Or not pedophiles, not rapists, not murderers. I don't fucking care if you smoked weed when you were 16, right? How is that grounds to fuck someone over the rest of their life? I don't smoke weed. I hate the smell of weed. I hate when people smell like weed, right? It's fucking disgusting, right? But that shouldn't be grounds for them to have their entire life ruined. It's retarded. I don't know. Me and the murderers are cool. I get it. Well, there's a difference between murder and self-defense. Prison is great for picking up new skills and tattoos. That is talk. Yeah, but you talk about CBT. Checkmate. Right? Anyways. Gibson, a supporter of President Donald Trump, lost his gun rights after a 2011 domestic violence misdemeanor conviction. So, 14 years ago, he received a domestic violence misdemeanor conviction. I don't have the details of that, but right here it says misdemeanor conviction. That is no fucking reason to have his gun rights stripped from him for 14 fucking years in the first place. But the fact that it's been 14 fucking years of denying an American citizen their Second Amendment right when he didn't fucking kill anyone hold up. Let's look at this. What is... What? Mel Gibson was charged with misdemeanor battery after a 2010 fight with his then girlfriend at his Malibu home. Okay? So... Okay, well, it doesn't give details, right? But it's a misdemeanor battery, right? A weapon wasn't even involved. A weapon wasn't even involved. Sorry, y'all. I can't fucking type right now. So like, all right, we just pulled it up, right? Because he would have actually had a different charge if a gun was used, right? So no gun was even used. He got into a fight with his girlfriend. I don't care. Society seems to look at that as very negative. I'm going to tell y'all right now, relationships are fucking hard. Relationships are fucking hard. And relationships as a man with a woman are the most difficult relationships you can have on planet Earth, because women will test every fucking button you have. Women will test you daily to see whatever the fuck they can get away with, and also try to assert themselves over you. Okay? And I'm not saying this is grounds to hit a woman or anything like that. But in a society where we teach women that it's okay to fuck around with men but not find out, you're going to have dudes who get fucking tired of being fucked around with, and then women are going to find out. If you want actual equality in this country, right? One, women need to face the exact same repercussions that men do. Two, women need to be raised to understand there are repercussions for fucking around with a man, right? Because that's how you have a just society. You raise men to not hit women, and you raise women to not do shit to get hit by men. Wow. Why is that too much to ask for? Just like the argument when I was younger about girls wearing spaghetti strap fucking shirts at school, right? Okay? It's inappropriate. It's inappropriate in the first place. You know what the solution to the argument is? I mean, look, here's the truth. Teenage girls are just as sexually active as teenage boys, right? Both fucking genders have their hormones fluctuating and going all crazy and shit. Both sides are horn dogs, all right? It's inappropriate for girls to wear revealing clothing. Okay? And it's inappropriate for boys to stare or whatever. Raise boys to not be horn dogs, and raise girls to not fucking draw out the natural fucking desires of boys. Okay? Like, I'm sorry. The solution is both. Right? Because the argument always was, well, you need to raise your boys to be better. Okay, well, maybe you should raise your daughters to be better as well. Sure, we could raise boys to be better, but we could raise girls to be better too. Right? You can raise boys to not be tempted by sin, and you can raise girls to not do the tempting of sin. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of deal. Okay? And I'm not a religious person or anything like that, but it's just the best way to describe it, right? Like, well, why is the argument fucking one-sided? It makes no fucking sense. So, anyways, the moral of the story is, this woman is fired because she refused lawful orders. That's it. But the left wants to lie because that's all they fucking do. But a second senior Justice Department official who is not authorized to speak publicly said Oyer's ouster is part of a very concerning set of personal moves across the federal government and DOJ. Okay, well, again, this is what I'm going to tell you right now. A second senior Justice Department official, not named, was not authorized to speak publicly, and then spoke publicly. This second senior Justice Department official should be removed. This individual should be fired as well. Bye. Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works in the federal government. You have to request permission to speak publicly regarding certain affairs, right? So as far as I'm concerned, either the name is listed and he's removed, and that will give him credibility for what he's saying because he decided to actually stand up for what he's saying and try to expose the truth, or this person doesn't exist in the first place, and this is all just being made up by the left, right? If you're not going to name names, I'm sorry, but then the information doesn't fucking matter. Shortly after Trump took office, the new leadership at the Justice Department, including the offices of the Solicitor General and the Deputy Attorney General, indicated that restoring gun rights to previously convicted felons was a top priority. Federal law bars people convicted of crimes, including misdemeanor state domestic violence, from owning or purchasing handguns. Handguns. That's stupid. That's an infringement on the Second Amendment. Therefore, that's actually illegal by the federal government and by the state government to do that. A senior Justice Department official questioned the decision. The fact that this was the number one thing they wanted to address was bizarre, said the official, who asked not to be named. Well, this person doesn't exist because they asked not to be named. Sorry, you have no credibility. You have no credibility behind what you're saying. And actually, this wasn't the number one thing they started doing. Sorry, a ton of other shit has happened. Multiple sources familiar with the matter said there have been ongoing meetings with senior Justice Department attorneys from the Deputy Attorney General's office, the ATF, the criminal division of the ATF of the the criminal division of the ATF, and the pardon attorney's office in recent weeks about the issue. Oyer was one of the people assigned to a working group. It was led by Paul Perkins of the Deputy Attorney General's office and James McHenry, the acting Attorney General, blah, blah, blah. Since the early 1990s, an appropriations restriction has prohibited ATF from exercising its authority to restore gun rights. Well, wouldn't it make sense that if there's a federal agency that can take away your gun rights, like the ATF, which was using bureaucratic law, the ATF was using bureaucracy to create administrative law and then force that on citizens when it wasn't passed by Congress, okay? To then retroactively and proactively remove the Second Amendment rights from American citizens. That shouldn't have been fucking happening in the first place, for starters. Okay, that's a non-starter right there. All right. But obviously, if the ATF is an agency that can remove rights, then it should also play a part in restoring the rights. So none of this makes fucking sense in the first place. And we're gonna get into this, man, because I'm starting to really pick up every time the left is talking about something. Names aren't named. Names aren't named unless like they can't get away with it, right? Like the pardon attorney, Elizabeth G. Oyer, who the whole subject is around. This is the only person listed in this fucking entire article, but they reference other people. Did I hear ATF? I'm going back to the mine. Oh shit, no, not the dogs. 5/24/2024, Middle East, International Christian Concern. Every month, International Christian Concern sources in the Middle East witness Christians leaving the region. The rates are especially alarming in countries with high levels of conflict and economic collapse. Places such as Iraq, Syria, the Palestinian territories, and to a lesser degree, Egypt and Lebanon have seen a continuation of the historic exodus of Christians during the past decade alone. The decline is especially significant when one considers that these communities are among the oldest Christian communities in the world. That is fact. Oh shit, sorry. Good thing. Oh. Why didn't you switch automatically, thing? Alright. Okay. That is the truth of the matter. Christianity started in Israel. Okay? That's where Christianity started. It spread throughout the Middle East and Africa long before it fucking got to Europe, right? The Romans are the ones who crucified Jesus Christ because they were against Christianity, which they later adopted. Right? Egypt, Lebanon, Christians in the Middle East, those Christian groups have been around way longer than the rest of Christianity. Okay? Because they're in the progenitor region of Christianity. Lebanon is I believe Lebanon is predominantly Christian. Whoops. Jesus. Oh, never mind. They're no longer the majority. According to a 2022 analysis by the Pew Research Center, the demographic landscape of Lebanon reveals a Christian population estimated at 43.4%, with Muslims constituting the majority at 57.6%. Lebanon originally was predominantly Christian, but this is what happens when you allow Islam in your country, right? And it's not because Islam's a good religion. It's actually because it's a violent religion. Because over the years, you're going to have Islamic extremists killing Christians, gaining more power, pushing Christians out, making life worse and worse for Christians. So Christians end up leaving. Okay? What is that? So, like, if you notice the difference between the 2012 study and the 2022 study, Christianity has dropped almost 3% in the country, and it's almost gone up 4% in Islamic. All right? But anyways, back to the fucking story. Okay? The Middle East used to be Christian. And then there were a lot of very bloody conflicts from Islam slaughtering Christians throughout the Middle East and stuff like that. But so this is the thing, like Iraq, right? Iraq's Christian population, they want to blame it on the United States toppling Saddam Hussein, and that does play a role. Okay? But Iraq's Christian population has been decreasing since it was taken over by Islam. Okay? Saddam Hussein did protect Christians because Christians in Iraq, right, just like Christians in Egypt, are typically more closely related genetically to the actual indigenous ancestry of the region, right? Like the Christians in Iraq speak Sumerian, right? Like they know the Sumerian language, right? But it's been dying over time. But Saddam Hussein was protecting Christians even though he was a dictator, and he was Sunni, so he was killing Shia Muslims and stuff like that. And after he died, Shia Islam started to intrude more in Iraq, and malcontents in Sunni Islam started taking over, and Christians started getting slaughtered by Muslims. So they've been fleeing Iraq. And it's actually funny because Alina Habba, one of fucking Trump's attorneys, her family actually immigrated. She's Iraqi, right? Like they immigrated from Iraq to the United States because of the toppling of Saddam Hussein. Because then life became unattainable for Christians. Amid all the modern political forms that have shaped the Middle East geopolitical order, the Christian presence in the region predates Islam, Zionism, Arab nationalism, European colonialism, Western Christianity, and the modern missions movement. It also gives us a unique perspective on geopolitical forces and persecution. While Middle Eastern Christians have endured waves of turmoil and direct persecution since the first century, the past 20 years have an undeniable effect on its influence and its demographics in the region. Quantitatively, an outline of some basic statistics gives us a part of the picture. During the breakup of the Ottoman Empire in the 1910s, widely considered the birth of the modern Middle East, the Ottoman Middle East was, by some estimates, as much as 20% Christian. Now the ratio is roughly 3% to 4% in the same territory. A decline of 16%, okay, in 115 years. Both Iraq's and Syria's Christians have shrunk by somewhere between 75% to 85% in the past 20 years, and Palestine's Christian community is finding itself at threat, highlighted by Gaza's Christian suffering near extinction in the latest Israeli-Palestinian war. While many events have helped bring about this decline, the Armenian genocide between 1914 and 1918, which left 2 million Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians dead across the Ottoman Empire, started what has become perhaps the most devastating century in the Middle Eastern Christian history. Following the end of the Ottoman Empire, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, followed by the post-European colonial era rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism, gave birth to the creation of borders that left Christian communities fragmented in a series of Israeli-Palestinian conflicts that have had devastating effects on Christian communities in the Holy Land, Jordan, and Lebanon. More recently, the rise of Salafi Islam and its extremist efforts to return to a 7th century brand of Islam has led to groups such as Al-Qaeda and Islamic State group, which have both targeted and killed Christians in Iraq and Syria, driving survivors out of the region. Continued shadow conflicts between the Islamist Iranian regime and its proxy groups across the region against Israel and the United States and their allies are shaping the current geopolitical environment in a way that does little to stop the flow of Christians from the Middle East. As the number of Christians in the Middle East declines, persecution against those who remain is increasing. The Christian exodus leaves fewer Christians who are friends, neighbors, and co-workers to members of the Muslim majority in these countries. As a result, fewer human connections, interactions, humanized Christians seen as the other. People often fear what they do not understand, making human communal interaction crucial for legitimate coexistence, tolerance, and interfaith dialogue. Without a presence of Christians in the workplace, neighborhoods, in the forum of society every day, Muslim citizens will not have opportunities to learn from and interact with their fellow Christian citizens in healthy ways because they don't want them there. This can lead to skewed views of Christianity through misinformation in media, education curricula, and in Muslim mosques and seminaries. Common misconceptions about Christians abound among Muslims in the Middle East, such as Christians worshiping three gods, that the Trinity is the Father, Son, and Mary, and that the Bible is corrupt and Christians are immoral deceivers, giving rise to prejudice and sometimes tragically violence towards Christians. This is actually taught in the Quran. They specifically reference not to talk about the Trinity. They specifically quote the reference of the Trinity. But Christianity does not worship three gods. Okay? Christianity worships one God and views the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost as all aspects of God. They believe in one God, but the Quran does teach that Christians follow the Trinity, right? But whatever. Anyways, persecution.org, it's an international Christian concern. Persecution.org, right? Christians are persecuted across the world. Even here in the United States, the left, the only religious group that the left attacks are Christians. They don't attack Hindu. It's Christians and Jews. Right? They hate the Jews and they hate Christians, but they don't attack Islam. They don't disrespect Islam. They don't disrespect or attack Hindu or anything like that. And obviously Christianity is extremely close to Judaism, right? Like it was formed from Judaism. Okay? And these are the only religions that they attack. They don't attack any other religion. Just Christian-based fucking religions. And they don't really talk about they don't actually really attack Judaism, actually. They just attack the state of Israel, right? The nation of Israel. That's it. But then because they're extremists in their hatred towards Israel, they blame Jews for Israel and the actions of Israel and stuff like that. Okay? So Christians actually are the only persecuted fucking religion in the United States. A country founded on with Christian values in mind, right? But this is me just highlighting evidence that Christians are actually persecuted globally. There's websites and stuff like that for it. They point to different issues. And it is just the truth, right? Christians are persecuted in the Middle East. They are denied rights in their own nations. Okay? So, DOJ Drug Organized Crime Task Force Chief fired. The head of a Justice Department task force dealing with organized crime and drug trafficking was fired by the Trump administration Friday, and he indicated he believes politics may have played a role in it. Dude, no shit. When you work for the federal government, politics always has a role in it. Adam Cohen said he was fired by acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove after spending weeks working with the Trump team on a new memo concerning the task force. Less than 24 hours ago, I received a 2-sentence memorandum addressed to me from Deputy Attorney General. It stated that I had been removed from my senior executive service position and that pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution, my employment at the U.S. Department of Justice was terminated. Cohen wrote on LinkedIn. It was a shock. I had met with the acting DAG every Tuesday evening to talk about important violent crime initiatives. I had spent last weekend editing a memorandum sent out under the DAG signature 18 hours before my termination. My personal politics were never relevant, not until yesterday. Cohen also wrote in the post. Putting bad guys in jail, it was as apolitical as it gets, right? No, actually it's not. We've seen from the left that they have a different interpretation of what bad guys are. Bad guys to the left is anybody who doesn't support the left, not actual bad people. Okay? But notice how he said my personal politics were never relevant, not until yesterday. So as soon as he gets fired, that's when he wants to claim politics were evident. The Justice Department on Thursday sent out a memo referencing Cohen's task force, saying it would combine the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force with the Project Safe Neighborhoods program. Together, the new entity would be called Operation Take Back America. The memo signed by Bove also stressed the need to combat illegal immigration, blah, blah, blah. Cohen spent a little more than a year working in the Biden White House as the Deputy Director of National Drug Control Policy, but he previously served as a director of the task force in the prior Trump administration, tapped to lead it in 2018. So what in this article actually indicates that there was any political motivation behind it? Actually, you know what? I will say The Hill for this one, they didn't actually assert that there was political motivation. They just said this dude claims that there's political motivation. But nothing is given in this article to actually deem that. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if there is, right? I don't fucking care if there is. Joe Biden literally created a fucking task force to start rooting conservatives or conservative-minded individuals out of the armed forces as soon as he took office. And he labeled them as extremism. Because here's what they did. They created a fucking, like, right here. Whatever. I mean, this is from 7 days ago. The Pentagon Inspector General has scrapped plans to investigate the military's training for identifying and countering extremism in the ranks. Okay? So, So the Watchdogs Directive issued February 25th abruptly halted an ongoing assessment of how military branches implement counter-extremism training, particularly efforts targeting radical organizations, white nationalist groups, and militias such as the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and the Ku Klux Klan. The decision to drop the review is the latest shift, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So this is what I'm saying, right? The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, those are motherfuckers that you do want in the military, right? Because they are nationalistic, they're patriotic as fuck, and those are the people you want to send to go fight wars for the US. Because sure, you can claim that the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are radical organizations. No, they're not. No, they're not. They might have some views that some people want to deem as radical, right? Like mainly concerning them being upset with the 2020 election results. I'm all for with making sure that no one in the military is part of the Ku Klux Klan, but you notice how y'all notice what's being targeted, right? This group was set up to root out extremism in the military. And the only thing that they were looking for are people, white conservative people, right? Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, predominantly white groups, and they're patriotic, right? Sure, they might get a little excessive, okay, at times, but they're patriotic, and you should actually take those people and you should hone them, right? Hone them. Give them purpose, like actual fucking purpose. Channel their energy. The Ku Klux Klan, I'm all for getting them the fuck out of there. I was in the Marine Corps. I didn't meet anyone who was part of the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, or the Ku Klux Klan, or any white nationalist groups, or any kind of crazy shit. But why isn't this organization looking for members of the Black Panthers or the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? Or Islamic extremism or communists? Yeah, you know who the fuck I'm talking about, Sylv. You know who the fuck I'm talking about, right? So clearly, this actually was an ill-intended fucking fucking review decision of the U.S. military. It was directed at white conservatives in the fucking U.S. military. They didn't want to remove political extremist ideology that exists on the left, communism, socialism, transgender ideologies, none of that shit. No, they started implementing that shit in the military, but then they went after conservatives. And this is what the left likes to do. They like to group people that have no fucking business being grouped together. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys can be grouped together, but they are separate from the Ku Klux Klan, right? Because these two organizations are similar to one another, and this one is not, right? So when they talk about radical organizations, that's the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, and when they talk about white nationalist groups, that's the Ku Klux Klan, right? But they don't make that distinction. The left loves to group shit together. They always take something that's extremely terrible, right? Like we're all brought up in this country to basically understand that the Ku Klux Klan is fucking terrible. It should not exist. Okay? But then they take that and they group it with these other two to make you associate the Ku Klux Klan with the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, but they have no association with each other at all. Okay? So back to that. So no shit, right? No shit. So people can be removed from the government for a lot of crazy shit. That's the moral of the story. Politics, yeah, no shit. Politics plays into it. But let's not sit here so politics played into it. You are being removed from the agency because you are clearly a left-leaning extremist who supports liberal ideologies, and I'm actually inclined to believe that Adam Cohen was probably in multiple senses working in every capacity against the federal government and against the Trump administration. And this is why you're seeing so many firings, because leftists have allowed their political indoctrination to interfere with the mission statement of the agency of the federal government that they work for. You don't ignore orders and you don't do shit to try to undermine the presidential administration that's in charge at the time because you don't like them or because you didn't vote for them. That's not how it works. When you work for the federal government, you do your job and that's fucking it. Period. Bye. End of story. Ontario slaps 25% increase on electricity exports to the U.S. in response to Trump's trade war. We're not even going to get into this because they already backed down. Okay, Ontario decided to get rid of this because Trump said, okay, well then we're doubling the aluminum and I believe it was aluminum and steel tariff on Canada. So then Ontario backed down. Great. And I'm not saying this to brag that Ontario backed down. I don't think Ontario should have done this in the first place. That's retarded. Okay? I want to speak to my Canadian brothers and sisters out there. I know as of late we're not getting along, but y'all need to hear the truth. We as Americans have been affording your nation the privilege to fuck us over in trade for a very long time. And I get it. It seems unfair, right? Because it's basically like we've been handing you $100, and every time we hand you $100, you give us change, and you only give us $25, right? So the tariffs serve a dual purpose. One, It's to incentivize businesses coming back to the United States because our economy is so fucked up. Sure, we have the biggest economy in the world, but our actual economy is so fucked up because of wage stagnation from exporting jobs, okay, and manufacturing overseas. Okay, this is why wages have stagnated, because there are other things that have continued to rise in cost while other goods just remained relatively cheap because of exporting the companies out. So as all these other things got expensive, but the goods stayed here, slowly over time, the wages just stayed here because they look at consumer goods versus other kind of shit that you still need money for. And then this is how they dictate where wages should be, right? So they're neglecting all the other shit and they're only looking at this. But this stayed here because companies in the United States have outsourced to poorer nations in order to exploit fucking children and basically slave labor to make cheap goods. So then our wages stay down here when they actually should have raised with the inflation of the economy, right? Because inflation is natural. It's going to happen. The population is going to increase, the economy is going to expand, and you have to keep wages up with it. And the only way that you keep wages up with it is by actually internalizing your own manufacturing. Nations should trade with each other. It's good. It's good to have those kind of economic ties because it promotes unity, but not in mass. No nation should be dependent on another fucking nation for anything. Period. Okay? What economic trade should basically serve as is there are things like it should only occur when there are things we absolutely cannot get unless we trade with you, or a little bit of economic trade to promote stimulation of economies, build ties with other nations, and stuff like that. So the moral of the story is the tariffs are twofold. It's to get manufacturing back to the US so that we can finally start to, I'm not saying we will get back on track. Or we will get back on track, but we won't be at the final destination. Okay? And it's to equalize with your nation, right? To equalize with y'all, because we don't need anything from Canada. We've been doing it because you are a very large, predominantly uninhabited nation, and almost the entirety of the Canadian population lives within X amount of miles from the US-Canada border, right? Y'all aren't living in the rest of fucking Canada or anything like that. Especially not in mass. Just like not a lot of people live in Alaska. Okay? So the whole issue is your economy is dependent on the United States. Our economy is not. And we've allowed that to happen to assist y'all to build up a good relationship with y'all. But look, now we've hit the point where we can't continue to do that. All right? We can't continue to do that. The tariffs aren't to fuck y'all over, right? They're to equalize with y'all because you have higher tariffs on us for a lot of other goods and a lot of goods than we do on you. And the reason we allowed that to happen is to help y'all. And now, guess what? Now we want to equalize. So you shouldn't be upset about it. You actually should have planned for the future much earlier and maybe fucking thought about potential ramifications if the assistance fell away. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with us retracting our assistance of your nation. You want sovereignty? You want to claim that you have sovereignty? You also need economic sovereignty to actually be a fucking sovereign nation. Okay? And I'm not trying to insult Canada or Canadians or anything like that. That's just the truth of the matter. Your economy is more dependent on the United States. The United States is not dependent on fucking Canada in any capacity whatsoever. Now we're seeking to equalize tariffs because we're tired of getting screwed over and we're trying to incentivize companies to come back to the United States. Okay? But the Ontario, what is he called? The Premier, right? what is that, like the mayor of the province or the governor of the province, whatever? I assume it's basically the governor of the province, right? Of Ontario. Or is Ontario a province? No, I know there's Ontario the city, but is Ontario a province? Oh yeah, Ontario. Okay, so I assume he's the governor of Ontario. Okay. Anyways, Biden's task force. We could get rid of that bad boy. Get rid of that bad boy. He already backed down. They're working on an agreement. The Sacramento Bee. Oh my God, Sacramento. You're named after a city in California. Oh, I wonder if you're biased. Deeply disrespectful. Calls grow for Vance to resign. No, they don't. I haven't heard of any calls for Vance to resign. And you guys want to hear why the left? This is why the left lost. Okay, this is why the left is insane. Here is the reason why they're calling for JD Vance to resign. Because Vice President JD Vance claimed that an economic stake in Ukraine was a stronger security guarantee than troops from some random country. Right? And this, like, they don't even highlight exactly what he said. He was talking about the United States having an economic stake in Ukraine. This has to do with the minerals deal that the United States and Ukraine were going to sign on to in order for the United States to try to recoup some of its money or all of its money for supporting the war in Ukraine. Right? So he was saying that the United States having an economic stake in Ukraine was a stronger security guarantee than troops from some random country. Because this is the way the European Union works. The European Union is the coalition of all the different countries that are a part of the European Union, and they will send peacekeeping forces or troops to certain nations or whatever, and they request volunteers from whatever countries of the European Union. Okay? There are 5, maybe 4 like mainstream ass European Union nations, like militarized nations. Germany, Britain, France, Poland. Maybe Hungary. I'm not too sure about Hungary, right? Those 4. The rest, I mean, you can maybe consider Spain, but not really. Okay? The rest of the nations in the European Union effectively don't have militaries, and even the big names I just dropped, they effectively don't have fucking militaries either, especially not to even defend themselves. Okay, let alone the entirety of the European Union. Okay, it's basically as if, you know, back in the day when the United States, every state had its own militia, and then they like federalized militias to fight wars and stuff like that. That's basically how it worked. Some states basically didn't have a fucking militia, others did. Okay, so basically what they're talking about, what JD Vance is referencing is, of course, it's a bigger security guarantee for the United States to have vested economic interest in your nation than it is to receive military forces from Estonia, Switzerland, Italy, Greece, Lithuania, right? Denmark, Sweden. Sure, they have technologically advanced militaries because of the United States, need I mind you, right? And our military industrial complex, right? But they don't have militaries that are capable of actually fighting or potentially fighting what they're claiming right now is Russia, right? Because we're talking about Ukraine. Huh? His were largely received as a dismissal of Allied military contributions, sparking backlash in the UK and France. Vance later noted that he had not referred to Britain or France. Yeah, no shit. No shit. because he's talking about some random country in the EU, like how I just described, right? Because when people talk about the European Union, they talk about Germany, they talk about the UK, they talk about France, and more recently they're talking about Poland. Nobody talks about the other nations in the European Union because they're not fucking relevant. No offense to y'all, right? There's nothing wrong with not being relevant, right? But that's the truth of the matter. You're not relevant. Okay? Just like, guess what? When foreigners talk about the United States, you know what states they really know? Florida, New York, Texas, and California. That's what they know. They don't know the other fucking states because they're not relevant. They're not big enough in any kind of capacity to be fucking relevant. Not in terms of their population or the size of the state. I'm talking about like in they're not known, right? They're not known. More states are becoming known for like political extremism, like Washington and Oregon, right? Washington and Oregon, they used to be recognized as like very big national park area states, very beautiful fucking states, okay? But now they're known for political leftist extremism, okay? That's what Trump was talking about. And now the left is calling for the vice president to resign for saying something that's true? Are you fucking kidding me? And then guess what? Then France and the UK both turned around. The president and the prime minister fucking turned around and they made speeches talking about how they absolutely needed American backing for any kind of actual peace negotiation for this conflict. Because what J.D. Vance said is not only accurate, but it's true. This is why the left lost the election, and this is why if you're voting left, you might want to consider that you are potentially indoctrinated, like legitimately. To call for a vice president to resign over something he said, well, a bunch of the articles we've been pulling up is the left claiming that they support freedom of speech. Guess not, right? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez goes scorched earth on mayor of New York City.
Chair Dale recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, Mayor Adams, are you aware that the former acting U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon was present at the January 31st meeting between your lawyers and federal prosecutors?
As I stated, and you, Congresswoman, you appear to want to ask the question over and over again, and so I could only give you the appropriate question over and over again. That this
okay, I understand, Mayor Adams. You're not answering this question because you believe you will incriminate yourself.
To the movement of
I understand.
This case.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit to the congressional record Danielle Sassoon's.
Notice how a Democrat woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right here, is interrupting and speaking over a black man, right? I thought, according to the left, that when a black American is speaking, or when a black person is speaking, you shut the fuck up and listen to them. And it's racist to interrupt them and talk over them. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a racist, and she hates black people. She is racist towards black people for talking over
resignation letter from the U.S. Attorney.
Without objection to order.
Thank you so much. In her letter, the former acting U.S. Attorney, a registered Republican.
You see how empty this hearing is?
For Antonin Scalia, was appointed by President Trump to serve as acting U.S. Attorney, was present at the January 31st meeting between Mayor Adams' attorneys and federal prosecutors. After that meeting with attorneys, the acting U.S. Attorney resigned rather than dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams. In her letter, which I have just submitted to the congressional record, Ms. Sassoon stated,
"You deserve to feel safe with the confidence that you're protected online. Introducing McAfee Plus."
That during that January 31st meeting, Mayor Adams's attorneys, quote, repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, describing it as a, quote,
Hey, AOC, was it also a quid pro quo for you to receive those tickets to the Met Gala and have your dress designed and paid for by some wealthy elites? Interesting.
Improper offer.
So clearly we have very rampant behavior predominantly with left-leaning individuals, because AOC is a leftist, Eric Adams is a leftist. And then there was also just another senator, former Democratic senator, who is being imprisoned or whatever because he was basically receiving quid pro quos and granting favors to people because he was getting kicked. Quid pro quos or kickbacks, right? Let's be honest. All right. So clearly, like, kickback behavior, I'm sure it occurs on the right too. But the left is very egregious with it. Very fucking egregious with it. So,
of immigration enforcement assistance.
let me tell you about the ATF mission statement. I know you sent that a while ago, but
of his case. End quote. The acting U.S. attorney has submitted a former acting U.S. attorney has submitted a letter. And Mayor Adams.
So what she just brought up is that the Department of Justice, people who fall under the Department of Justice, or individuals who fall under the judicial branch, dropping charges against somebody for their cooperation with the federal government. The fucking thing that occurs by the hundreds, if not thousands, daily in the United States. Do you know what the judicial system calls it? Plea agreements. This is not any kind of egregious behavior, right? People lessen charges, they dismiss cases, they dismiss charges, they fucking do whatever all the time, right? This is common. This is fucking common. Like, people are not, we don't have regulations, like strict regulations that are imposed for punishment of crimes, right? It is at the discretion of the prosecution. Okay? Plea agreements exist, right? It's kind of like, take this for example, right? I watched a video a while ago and I loved it, man. Restores my faith in humanity, and just, it's the kind of video where you know that we can fix it. Okay? Police officers arresting a man. I think it was in California, and it was a black man, right? I think he had a warrant out for his arrest, or he had gotten pulled over and something. The cop is chewing gum. The cop starts to choke and can't choke on the gum and can't dislodge the gum of his own accord. The cop's like trying to hit himself on the sternum and stuff like that. The black man tells him to give him his keys so he can uncuff himself to help the police officer. The black man uncuffs himself, saves the life of the police officer, and then turns around to resume being arrested. And the police officer refuses to arrest him and calls it in that this man just saved the life of that police officer. Because why not? Right? If you live in a society that can't punish bad, you have no society. But if you also live in that same society and you can't reward good, you have no society. Right? Because it's the same way. It's the same way. The reason why plea agreements are supposed to exist, not how they're enforced now, right? But plea agreements are supposed to exist by utilizing the lesser evil to take down the greater evil, right? You have a someone who's selling drugs, and you have them flip on whoever's the actual supplier or the main distributor, okay? for a reduction of their sentence or a dismissal of their case or whatever, because you like common sense dictates, right, that you would deem that these charges aren't that big of a deal, especially in contrast. There's always a bigger fish, right? You want the bigger fish, so you use the little fish to get the bigger fish, right? And that's supposed to be the intent of plea agreements. But the way that the federal government and state governments actually exercise plea deals now are basically just to decrease the administrative burden on the state or on the federal government. That's it, right? Because and it's basically tricking people into taking lesser sentences when they wouldn't have gotten a sentence in the first place. That's what it is. That's plea agreements are being abused like a motherfucker in this country, right? And so the left right now is upset about Eric Adams having his case dismissed by the Department of Justice, which were the ones who were weaponized to actually seek this case against him because he started to speak out about illegal immigration. And now with him cooperating with the federal government to actually start to root out illegal immigration, they're dismissing the case against him because illegal immigration is deemed as a bigger priority, right?
Do you know how many federal prosecutors total resigned rather than file the motion to drop the charges?
It was reported that 7.
7. Correct. Mr. Chair, I would like to submit another letter from Hagen Scott.
You mean to tell me prosecutors that chose to resign instead of prosecute so that they can maintain their fucking status as Democrats?
Scotton, his resignation letter.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Scotton was an assistant U.S. attorney who also attended the January 31st meeting between your attorneys and federal prosecutors. He also resigned rather than drop the charges. In his resignation letter, he stated, and I quote, "Our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials."
Crazy. So why are people who are in New York City committing terrible fucking crimes, flagrant and egregious, and then not being charged or kept in prison or jail? So if our argument, right, is going to be we must punish people who do wrong, why is the left selectively punishing people who do wrong? And then arguing that it's not okay to selectively punish people that are doing wrong. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I do think that she is a pretty woman, but goddamn, she's either stupid as fuck or she's actually a terrible person. Right? Those are your two options as a fucking Democrat at this point. You are either actually stupid as fuck or you are just an evil fucking person because all you do is lie, lie, lie. Okay? So I really don't care to listen to any more of the video because we've already broken down the narrative. Washington State sues rural county for helping ICE round up undocumented immigrants. This is the game the left plays. The state, the power of the state is suing a rural county. So the leftist government, the tyrannical leftist government of Washington State is suing what I'm going to presume is a conservative rural county because the county is complicit in aiding the federal government to enforce federal law. The Washington Attorney General claims in a new lawsuit that the sheriff in rural Adams County has been breaking state law for at least 3 years by helping federal immigration officers round up and collect information on suspected illegal immigrants. And since the election of President Donald Trump, Sheriff Dale J. Wagner has taken the position that the Keep Washington Working Act, a state law passed in 2019, is illegal, the lawsuit states. Because it is. Because state law does not supersede federal law. The law passed with bipartisan support restricts the ability of local authorities to participate in the enforcement of federal immigration law. It's illegal. It's illegal. Supreme Court, you need to get on this shit. Your inability to act or your unwillingness to act is what's causing this country to descend into chaos, because you are openly allowing leftists to abuse the Constitution. State law does not supersede federal law. Federal law supersedes state law. So if any state passes a law that attempts to supersede federal law, it is illegal. It does not exist. This sheriff is 100% right. If the state law, I don't care if it has bipartisan support, because even the conservatives in Washington state are actually fucking liberals, right? I don't care if it has bipartisan support. It doesn't make it any less illegal. I'm sorry. That is how the government structure in the fucking United States works. Period. That's just how it fucking works. Period. State law does not supersede federal law. So if federal law comes out and says meth is illegal, and a state says, "Oh, we're decriminalizing meth," that law actually does not exist. Right? It actually does not, because federal law actually states that it is in fact illegal. Now, if the federal government comes out and says, we have no position on the use of meth, then states are free to do whatever the fuck they want with it. Okay? But this is what the left does. They are suing, they are trying to silence and prevent conservatives from actually enforcing the law. And then they change language to make it seem like what the person on the right is doing is wrong. Suspected illegal immigrants, undocumented residents, are illegal immigrants who live in the state of Washington. Okay? The state of Washington is violating the Constitution and federal law. And the state of Washington should not receive any federal funding and actually should be sanctioned, right? That's actually what should happen to states that aren't complicit with federal law, period. The state's restrictions attempt to tie the hands of law enforcement, making it harder to cooperate with federal agencies that help keep dangerous individuals off our streets. Wagner wrote in a statement posted to Facebook on Monday, "Public safety should never be a political issue, yet this lawsuit prioritizes ideology over the safety of our communities." That's the truth, for starters. Two, I'm actually already tired of the dangerous individuals off our streets. I don't care if they're dangerous or not. If you break the law, you break the law. You get punished for it. Sorry. According to the state in the lawsuit, the law allows law enforcement agencies to focus on their core duties of public safety by protecting all residents fairly and building trust with the community. Law enforcement is not there to protect the public. Law enforcement is there to enforce the fucking law. I'm sorry. That is just the truth. Law enforcement is not for public safety. Typically, it goes hand in hand and it's considered public safety, because if they enforce the law against people who are doing dangerous things, right, that's typically how laws come about. We determine that this behavior is dangerous. We're passing a law to criminalize the behavior, to punish people who break this law because we deem that it's bad for society. Therefore, that's why they're given an aura of public safety, but law enforcement is actually not there for public safety. Public safety is a secondary effect of enforcing the law. It's supposed to be, right? That's the intent. Fuck, man, I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired of the left. I'm getting tired of the left and the lies and the abuse of their power. And then they have the audacity to fucking come out and claim that other people are abusing their authority when actually they're not. They're actually just exercising within the constraints of their authority, right? Like, I'm fucking sick of it. But I'm not. I'm less disgusted with people lying than I am with people actually believing the fucking lies because they are not educated on anything. I'm sorry, but we need to create a common sense fucking test, and like fuck all the other tests to actually be able to vote. There needs to be a common sense test, and if you cannot pass a common sense test, well, I'm sorry, but you have no place fucking voting. I'm sorry, fuck, that's just the truth. If you cannot read between the fucking lines, right? You just go along with what the media says, right? And we'll actually get in. We'll get into it. Fuck it, and I'll just clip it out of the video, and that's what I'll make the video about. Okay. But yeah, Kash Patel is asking 2 questions that should concern everybody. 2 FBI officials familiar with the matter, they don't exist, told NBC News on Monday that FBI Director Kash Patel has inquired about setting up a direct phone line to the White House and about retaining a private security detail for himself. Those questions, and importantly, the possible motivation behind them, could be significant and disturbing clues as how Patel views his job and his agents. And I love this video that MSNBC has right here, claiming that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are conspiracy theorists. FBI agents within the FBI and other intelligence agents fabricated the Steele dossier in 2016. They fabricated the Steele dossier, which has been the entire fucking speaking point from the left to claim Russian collusion with Trump, was fabricated by FBI agents and other intelligence agency agents and law enforcement agents, right? They made up an entire compilation of information and then signed it. They colluded with one another to sign it, to give it some validity. And it was found to be fabricated. They did, in fact, rig the 2016 election. And then again in 2020, the FBI went and censored information regarding the Hunter Biden laptop story for the 2020 election, which people theorize if that information could have actually been allowed to circulate within the American public, that Biden would have lost the 2020 election, because it was so fucking egregious, and it still is so egregious, and it hasn't been dealt with. But the FBI suppressed that information. Congressional hearings have already occurred on this stuff and found that the FBI suppressed this information. So Dan Bongino and Kash Patel aren't conspiracy theorists for believing that the elections were rigged. They were in fact rigged. Okay? To the extent in which they were rigged, that's the part that's up for debate, because Democrats started throwing everybody in prison or censoring everybody who questioned the results of those elections. And they label them election deniers. It's okay to deny an election, guys. It's okay to not to be upset with the results of an election. Just like the leftists are clearly unhinged about the results of the 2024 election, right? Those questions, and importantly, the possible motivation behind them, could be significant, disturbing clues as to how Patel views his job and his agents. No, it could actually be significant and disturbing clues as to how Patel has to operate within the agency he leads, because of political extremists rampant within the department. As first reported by the Wall Street Journal on March 7th, according to people familiar with his inquiry, which means they don't exist and the story's being made up, Patel queried officials as to how he might have secure lines installed in his office and home that would go directly to the Oval Office. Ben Williamson, the Bureau's assistant director for public affairs, denied the Journal's report. There's nothing wrong with a cabinet member wanting a direct line to the person that they serve. No shit, right? Like, kind of like other people below the FBI, the director of the FBI, want a line. Like, so the assistant director of the FBI wants a line to the director of the FBI. And then people below the assistant director of the FBI want lines to the assistant director of the FBI. No shit, right? It's kind of just establishing more efficient communication. Jesus Christ, man, the fucking left. Disgusting. Ukraine agrees to U.S.-led ceasefire plan and Russia accepts. Yeah. No shit, right? No shit. And it should be very confusing to people on the left why it is that the left is continuously trying to push this war in Ukraine and why people on the left support the war in Ukraine. If you are a leftist and you support the war in Ukraine, I have one question for you. Can I ask why you have not enlisted with the Ukrainian Foreign Legion or like the French Foreign Legion in order to go fight the war against the Russians in Ukraine? Can I ask that? Well, I know I can ask it. I'm not actually asking your permission, all right? Because fuck you. That's why. All right? I'm asking that question because if you feel so righteously that this war in Ukraine needs to be prosecuted, why are you not putting your ass on the line? Because if you don't believe in something, you don't, like, if you believe in something, you put your ass on the line. If you don't believe in something, you don't. So clearly you don't actually believe in it. But what you believe in is extracting money from America, the wealth of the middle class, right? And the poor, and sending it to Ukraine. For what? Why are American leftists so hell-bent on fighting a war in a foreign nation? Why? And I gotta say, I want to thank people on the left because your unhinged fucking delusional state for the last decade has really woken up a lot of Americans, and it's continuing to wake up a lot of Americans, right? Your whole woke movement, right? Because I talked to my younger brother about this, right? When you're being woken up out of sleep, right? You're being woke up, right? You're like, huh? What? What the fuck's going on, right? Because you're just sitting there sleeping, minding your own business. But someone is coming to wake you to wake you up for some crazy ass reason, and you have no idea what the fuck's going on. So you're kind of in a delirious state, right? You're not aware. You're not cognizant of all your surroundings because you're just being woke up. There you are in your REM sleep, fast asleep, deep asleep, not knowing what the fuck's going on. You're being woke up. That's the woke movement. You don't know what the fuck's going on. You're being shooken up by some crazy ass unhinged leftist. And you're like, yeah, okay, all right, let's go, because you're being woke up. Well, the woke movement has directly led to people being awake. And it's not correlative with their movement actually awakening people. Like, it's not their involvement. Like, they are not awakening people. They're causing other people to be awake. Right? Because there was other people in their homes asleep, fucking minding their own business, and so many other people are their homes are being broken into, and they're being forced up, right? They're being woke up. That now there's a ton of people out on the street fucking talking and saying crazy shit, and they're awake now. They woke the fuck up of their own accord, and they're awake now, and they see past the fucking bullshit. Okay? So I want to thank the left for that. So keep doing what you're doing. Really, keep doing what you're fucking doing, because you have pushed so many more people to have common sense and actually think for themselves, because you've given them every reason to not trust any establishment, not the media establishment, not the government establishment, nothing. First question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Good question. It does. It absolutely does. Right? I mean, there could be an argument from certain people, certain scientific fields about that in relation to perception of things, right? But it does indeed make a sound based on how we perceive the environment. On average, a tree 100% does make a sound. But anyways, Ukraine has agreed to an immediate 30-day ceasefire negotiated by the U.S. if Russia accepts the plan. Ukraine is ready to start talking and stop shooting, said Secretary of State Marco Rubio. As part of the plan, the U.S. immediately lifted its pause on sharing intelligence with Ukraine and will resume security assistance to that country. U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to conclude as soon as possible a comprehensive agreement for developing Ukraine's critical mineral resources. Let me refresh this, right? 1 day ago. Yeah, you guys know what happened right after this? Ukraine launched a massive suicide drone assault on Russia. Right? As part of the plan, the U.S. immediately lifted its pause on sharing intelligence with Ukraine and will resume security assistance to that country, which was invaded by Russia more than 3 years ago. Yeah, there you go. Yep, that'll do it, right? That'll do it. It's almost like taking away the money tree gets them to stop fucking persecuting a war. Okay? I'm not saying Russia's a great place. I'm not saying that Vladimir Putin's a good person. I don't believe that. I do believe that generally, like most people in a lot of countries, they want nothing to do with the war, and they're not inherently evil or anything like that. People who exist on the international stage, such as presidents and like world leaders and stuff like that, they have a bunch of different fucking reasons for a lot of different things. Whatever. Okay? No one on the right is defending Russia. No one is. Okay? All people on the right have said is that we can understand where Russia's coming from because if the same shit happened to us, we'd be doing the same fucking thing, right? So that doesn't inherently make them bad, and that doesn't inherently mean that we're siding with Russia. We simply don't want any involvement in that war because it is not our war. If y'all want to act like Russia is the big bad, well, I got something to tell you. The Pacific Ocean separates us in the west, and the Atlantic Ocean separates us in the east. Okay? Now we could talk about Alaska and like the Aleutian Islands and stuff like that. Not a big deal. Okay? There is no immediate repercussions to the United States in terms of military strike capacity from Russia, with the exception of fucking ICBMs. Okay? Nuclear weapons. I mean, ICBMs aren't they're typically used as nuclear, all right? But they're not completely nuclear, right? Not all the time. They can be loaded with conventional munitions, stuff like that. So the left just wants to take money from the middle class and the poor in the form of taxes, because taxation is a socialist policy. And the left supports socialism, and the people who, according to the left, the people who pay all the taxes in this country are the middle class. So if the left is complaining that, like the rich aren't paying their fair share, it's because taxes seek to limit people's financial freedom, right? So that the government has more control over them. And it's a policy implemented by socialists on the left. And according to them, the rich doesn't pay their fair share. And because they don't pay their fair share, that means that the middle class and the poor are paying an uneven amount of taxes, which means that they're the ones paying a majority of the taxes. Okay? Which is bullshit in the first place. I mean, that's a long conversation, right? So that means that when they want to send money to a foreign nation, they want to take the money from the middle class and the poor and send that to other people. Simple as the simple does, right? So the left wants to take money from the poor and the middle class to send to Ukraine to fight a war that we have no business being involved in whatsoever. Clearly, this war has shown that Russia is not the big bad that everybody claims Russia out to be, right? We have fucked up. The West collectively has fucked up by not allowing, after the Soviet Union collapsed, to take in Russia and start applying soft power. Like, they weren't unified, right? The collapse just happened. People had different feelings, different thoughts, all that kind of stuff. That was the moment to strike and start implementing soft power to convert Russia to a constitutional republic or a constitutional democracy, and then embrace fucking capitalism, right? I mean, we can still try to do that. The percentage chance isn't as high as it would have been, right? But we fucked up doing that, and the only reason that occurred is one originally because of communism, residual effects of communism, and bad blood between Russia and the West. Okay. And then on top of that, the West also needed to maintain a symbol of their entire purpose, because NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created to counter the Soviet Union and the spread of communism. Okay, so after the Soviet Union collapses, and the main perpetuator of fucking communism was the Soviet Union. Okay, NATO technically had no purpose to exist. But they had to continue to make up a purpose, kind of like how DEI people exist, right? They have to keep finding issues within life to justify their own existence, right? Because they're not actually providing a service. Okay? They're constantly moving the goalposts to create issues to justify their existence, to provide their service, but their actual service wasn't needed in the first place because all the issues they fucking talk about are bullshit. All right. Supreme Court turns down religious discrimination case over 2 justices' objections. Supreme Court, you need to do your fucking job. Your lower courts are no longer operating, right? Like, so the Supreme Court, let's put it like simply for people who are fucking hard-headed, okay? The Supreme Court is the CEO of the business, okay? The business is the judicial branch. The various other courts are underlings of the fucking CEO. The CEO guides the direction of well, I would say the Constitution is the CEO. Okay? The Constitution is the CEO. Under that is the board, and that's the Supreme Court. Under that is everybody else who works for the company. Okay? And the company's the judicial branch, and it's the fucking country. All right? The people working under the board now, the board isn't directing the people. Like, the CEO is the Constitution. All right. It's very explicit, and common sense fucking dictates the rest for the Constitution of the United States and laws in this country. The board of directors, the Supreme Court, isn't fucking taking cases. They're not ruling on enough cases. They're not getting involved as much as they should be, because yes, at some point, the board of directors doesn't need to be involved, right? Because the business is supposed to be such a well-oiled machine that it can operate, at least for a period of time, without the direction of the board. Okay? The board takes its direction from the fucking Constitution, the CEO, of how they want to manage the fucking business, which at the end of the day is the fucking country. The board is not communicating with the fucking CEO, and then the people who work under the fucking board for the business don't know what the fuck they're doing anymore and just decided to start doing whatever the fuck they want. That's basically what's happening. Supreme Court, you need to do your fucking job and rein in the corruption of the lower fucking courts. All right? All this is Hiddle versus the city of Stockton in California removed this man who is a fire chief from his position because he's Christian. The petition for writ of certiorari is denied. Justice Thomas, with whom Justice Gorsuch joins, dissenting from the denial of certiorari or whatever. Blah blah blah. Okay. I don't want the Supreme Court's shit. I want the details of the case brought against them. because he filed religious discrimination because they removed him for being Christian, and the things that they cited were actually because him being Christian. Hold up, let's see right here. Oh, sorry. As far as I'm concerned, like, look at this guy. Look at this leftist. As far as I'm concerned, unless you work for a religious institution, your religious beliefs shouldn't mean anything. Freedom of religion doesn't give people the right to use your faith to discriminate against others. What are you talking about? He's the one being discriminated against, right? I don't have the fucking details. Oh wait, here we go. Nope, this is just the amended opinion. Okay, here. In May 2010, in deciding a motion for summary judgment, review the evidence in the light most favorable to the non-moving party, drawing all reasonable inferences in the party's favor. Here we recite the facts in light of most favorable to Hiddle, right? Here's what y'all need to understand. Nothing was proven in the court of law. This because they removed him and he filed a lawsuit because he was being discriminated against. And they just went over information without actually having a fucking trial, right? Here we recite the facts in light of the most favorable to Hiddle. Hiddle was the fire chief of the Stockton Fire Department during the period relevant to his appeal. In that capacity, Hiddle initially reported directly to Gordon Palmer, Stockton city manager, after Palmer retired in 2009. Hiddle began reporting directly to Montez, who had been appointed deputy, blah, blah, blah. In May 2010, the city received an anonymous letter purporting to be from an employee of the Stockton Fire Department. A leftist in the Stockton Fire Department who is upset that the fire chief is a fucking Christian reported him on some trumped up shit. The letter described Hiddle as a corrupt, racist, lying religious fanatic who should not be allowed to continue as the fire chief of Stockton. In her subsequent affidavit in support of her motion for summary judgment, Montez stated that the source of this information was not an anonymous individual, but a high-ranking fire department manager who had told her that Hiddle favored members of the coalition who all shared his Christian faith, and that her concern was that Hiddle was providing favorable treatment and assignments to these other employees. Yeah, people typically favor the people who share their same opinion. And this is exactly why you became unhinged and called him a corrupt, racist, lying, religious fanatic with no evidence for the fact. Okay? And that her concern was that Hiddle was providing favorable treatment. Oh my God, I'm so sorry that the fire department chief was sending Christian firefighters out to fight fires while you didn't have to. Oh my God. About 1 month after the city received the letter, Montez told Hiddle in a meeting that she had heard he was part of a group of folks, a Christian coalition, and that he shouldn't be involved in that. When Hiddle stated that as a supervisor, you can't tell me I can't practice my faith when I'm off duty, Montez asked him about his off-duty Christian activities. Hiddle told her that there was no Christian clique within the fire department that was meeting together, nor did she have any right to tell Hiddle what he could or could not do with respect to his religion while off duty. No shit, that's true. And there's nothing wrong with someone being a Christian who's on duty as well. If they want to take us, they do a fuck. If they're responding to a fire emergency and in the truck the fucking dude's praying, there's nothing wrong with that. According to Hiddle, during this conversation, Montez said that Hiddle should not be part of anything like that as the fire chief. You see this? This is literally evidence that the fucking upper management was telling him that because he's a fire chief, he cannot be a Christian. That's insane. That's religious persecution of fucking Christians. Should refrain from doing any of those types of activities with other firefighters. Montez did not specifically explain what those type of activities comprised, but Hiddle thought the interference was the fact that I may have meetings with them, I might pray with them, I may have opportunity to speak to them about God, leadership in that respect. Hiddle and Montez are in apparent agreement that Montez did not initiate the Christian coalition term herself. On July 1st, 2020, Bob Dias, became city manager at Hittel's and Deis' first meeting. Hittel expressed to Deis that he is a religious man and that he's a Christian. Deis responded with a blank stare, and there was a long pause. Deis' body language and stare made Hittel very uncomfortable. Right? Hittel felt that Deis' coldness and rejection was because Hittel expressed that he was a Christian. Yeah, it was. I wholeheartedly believe that it was. And that Deis had heard about the anonymous letter in the Christian coalition. Hittel had the distinct impression that Deis' mind was already made up about Hittel. They're talking about, they are labeling, they're fucking labeling Christians that got together as a Christian coalition as if it's a terrorist organization. Right? Nothing in here so far indicates anything else. Hittel had the distinct impression that Deis' mind was already made up about Hittel. In her oversight of Hittel, Montez became very concerned about Hittel's performance as fire chief in other ways, unrelated to Hittel's alleged religious favoritism. Specifically, Montez claimed that Hittel worked against the city's plans to cut public budget costs and expenses, unlike all the other city department heads during the time who were cooperating with the city manager's office. No shit! The fire chief is going to work against the fire department having its funding cut. No shit. No shit. Oh my fuck. Oh, I need to have a fucking God damn. I need to have a fucking filter to fade into that turns my face cam red when I'm doing a fucking Rose rant, okay? Because no shit, it's almost like that's exactly what Democrats do with everything. That they fight against getting their fucking budget cuts. It's almost like you've seen lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit since Trump has been in office because he's trying to axe the budgets for leftists, right? Oh my fuck, dude. Ultimately, on a successful effort to avoid the city declaring bankruptcy. As another example, in 2010, a proposition referred to as Measure H was slated for the ballot that November. Some members of the city's fire department opposed Measure H because they believed that it would undermine fire department autonomy and authority. No shit. Because individual fire departments need autonomy and their own authority to actually carry out being fucking effective. Right? That's kind of how it works. You want individual fire departments to be able to respond to a fire instead of them having to request permission from someone in fucking San Francisco or Los Angeles, right? No shit. In response, several off-duty firefighters visited nursing homes wearing their on-duty fire department clothing and told the residents that Measure H, if passed, would prevent the fire department from providing timely services to seniors in the event of an emergency. Okay. Let me talk to y'all about something, right? This is okay. I get it. I get any argument where you shouldn't be doing that. You're not supposed to be a representative of your place of employment when saying some other shit. But if you're a firefighter and there's a measure that's going to actively undermine firefighting, no shit, you're going to be protesting or trying to spread the word as a firefighter that this measure is going to disrupt firefighters. Okay? Now, off-duty firefighters are still on duty. Being a firefighter is basically being in the military, right? It's similar, right? Being an off-duty police officer is the same thing. You are still always on duty. That's just the matter, right? They don't actually expressly state like what type of off-duty they were or something like that, okay? It could be they just got off. They just got off duty and they had a meeting at this place, or shortly after their meeting they were about to go on duty, whatever. So you could chalk it up to they was just kind of untasteful, whatever. Blah blah blah. When the city manager's office received complaints about on-duty firefighters advocating against Measure H, Deus and Montez raised the issue with Hiddle. Montez claimed that Hiddle agreed that the conduct was not acceptable but did not make an effort to stop it from occurring. Hiddle disputes this allegation and states that Local 456 owned an antique fire engine that displayed a banner Stockton Professional Firefighters, which had been used for many years for campaigning off-duty prior to the termination of Hiddle, with no objection from management. So exactly, this is what he's saying. He's claiming that precedent has been set and he was going based off precedent. Okay, this is why precedent's very fucking dangerous. Okay, the union used the antique fire truck without objection from HR, Human Resources, Deus or Montez for holidays and community events for many years, and Hiddle had not been disciplined for the union using the antique fire truck on off-duty time until 2010 when it was raised by Deus and Montez for the first time. Right? So clearly you get some fucking some unhinged liberals in the fire department with unhinged fucking leftists in city management, and they are colluding to undermine these fucking firefighters and the fire chief. Dude, this is so fucking evident. Like, it's so apparent. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a religious person. This is already fucking evident. He agreed. Montez claimed that Hiddle agreed, right? The person who's levying accusations against Hiddle came out and said that Hiddle agreed that the conduct was not acceptable, but did not make an effort to stop it. How does he stop it other than instructing them that they can't fucking do it or they shouldn't do it? Tell me. They're not violating the law. So what does he do, right? What can he do? In light of these and other issues, including what Deus believed was Hiddle's failure to assure that proper decorum and ethical parameters were in place and enforced in his department, Deus instructed Montez to continue directly supervising Hiddle. According to Montez, during the fall of 2010, due to what she believed was a clear lack of leadership and management skills displayed by Chief Hiddle, Montez directed Hiddle to find and attend a leadership training program. Montez states that she was specifically directed Hiddle to find a program intended for fire chiefs or at least designed for the upper management of public entities, and was clear to Hiddle that she wanted the leadership training to be related specifically to public sector service. Montez claims that let me get this straight. Montez tells him to go find this fucking program that may or may not exist, and then this is going to be used as a decision for removing him from the position. Montez, it is your prerogative to find that program and request that Hiddle then attends that program, right? Montez claims that she suggested to Hiddle that the League of California Cities may provide such training. Why would a League of California Cities, right, that has to do with city management be offering a program for fire chiefs? Makes no sense. They shouldn't. And that she was aware that the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Post Officer Standards and Training offered up upper management training programs to police departments through that group. So federal law enforcement agencies provide upper management training programs for law enforcement agencies. A fire chief's not part of law enforcement. Hiddle stated that he reviewed various leadership training programs, but was unable to find any that were in California or at a cost that the fire department could afford. Wow. It's almost like that fire department was campaigning against reducing the fire department's budget, and then the fire department budget was cut, and the fucking city declared bankruptcy because it's in California, and they overspend like a motherfucker to support illegal immigrants and shit like that, and they don't have money for the actual fucking city or its citizens. Dude, I'm already done reading this. I'm already fucking done reading this. This is clear and total fucking bullshit from California, the lower court, and fuck you, Supreme Court, for not doing your job in upholding the Constitution in the United States. It is evident that Hiddle did not actually have poor leadership or anything that interfered with being firefighters. Did they stop responding to calls? Do they have a much lower efficacy rate on their calls that isn't correlative to a reduction in budget? Because a reduction in budget means a reduction in firefighters, a reduction in equipment, a reduction in training, etc., right? Where is the actual evidence that him being a Christian or partaking in these things hindered his ability as a fire chief to lead his unit in fighting fires. Where is it? Where the fuck is it? Everything they're outlining here, right, just proves to me more that they are targeting him as being a Christian. Because someone else who wasn't related, it was a upper level fucking fire management, right? Let's go back. What'd they say? Who did they find it out to be? In May 2010, the city received an anonymous letter. Montez stated that the source of the information was not an anonymous individual, but a high-ranking fire department manager. So he is the fire chief of his unit, okay? This high-ranking fire department manager, okay? Sorry, I was trying to find out if it's Montez. No. Montez is the one investigating. There's Montez, Hiddle, and Deus. Okay, that's a city manager. Okay, never mind. So they don't even list who this individual is, who this high-ranking fire department manager is. So who the fuck is it? Because this is someone who is not a part of that fire unit, right? They're upper levels of management. Okay? But they're not directly part of that fire station. Okay? Fire chiefs are assigned to fire stations. Okay? So clearly they took issue with him being a Christian because they claim him doing prayers with other Christian firefighters and stuff like that is him favoring them. So far, they have not provided in this affidavit or this complaint of anything that actually fucking shows that they are correct in this. They just say they had an issue with him being Christian. They have an issue with him and other people who also have to be Christian protesting against shit that's going around them, which is their First Amendment right. Okay? It doesn't matter that they're firefighters. They're able to protest against it. Okay? Just like federal employees can protest against laws, right? But now if them protesting against the law causes them to no longer be able to fucking actually perform their duties, then it's an issue. But they still have the right to protest. These firefighters have the right to protest. And because of the nature of their job, right? Being a firefighter is 24/7. Being a firefighter, because it's 24/7, right? Because it's just one of those fucking jobs, doesn't mean that they stop having rights. This is clear and cut from the fucking state of California and the city of Stockton. Religious persecution of Christians because they don't like Christians and they're upset with Christians who are trying to stand up against them. Subsequently, on October 15, 2010, the Stockton Record reported that Hiddle co-owned a vacation property with the Firefighters Union president, Dave Maisto. Fire Marshal Matthew Duame and retired fire captain Alan Anton. Montez claims that she learned of the conflict only after the newspaper article was published because Hiddle had previously disclosed this joint ownership to city officials. And Montez's view, this co-ownership raised questions about Hiddle's impartiality with respect to balancing the interests of the union and the taxpayers. They co-owned a vacation property. They had a timeshare. Did they use union funds for this? Did they use taxpayer funds for this? No? Then what the fuck is the problem? Montez issued a notice of confidential investigation Hiddle on November 1st, 2010, identifying 5 issues. Okay, I don't need to get in this. Okay, because this was actually the only part that could have actually been concerning, right? Him owning this property, co-owning, having a timeshare with the Firefighters Union president, Dave Maisto, which The firefighters union president should have close relationships with firefighters, because the firefighters union president is a representative of the fire department and firefighters, a fire marshal, and a retired fire captain, Alan Anton. Wow. So a bunch of people who are related to firefighting have a timeshare. Jesus Christ. Now, owning the timeshare isn't the issue. The only issue that would exist there is how they acquired the timeshare. And in this, they do not state that they use taxpayer funds or union dues or anything like that. Supreme Court, you need to get involved. What the fuck are you doing? Seriously. Republicans on the Supreme Court, what the fuck are y'all doing? Y'all are the ones who actually uphold constitutional law and constitutional precedent, right? The left are the ones who argue. The left Supreme Court justices are the ones who take up the fringe ass liberal fucking cases that actually go against the Constitution and stuff like that. And for a long time, it's been the Republicans on the Supreme Court who actually uphold the Constitution of the United States. And you are remiss in your fucking duties for not taking up this case. I don't care. Like, sure, it's a case that should have been handled by a lower court, but the lower court is evidently corrupt and clearly fucking biased. This is pathetic. White House issues unhinged press release that could have been written by Trump himself. I don't even know if I want to read this, because I'm so worn out already from this long ass political stream, right? Almost 3 hours, right? Never have I read such an atrociously unprofessional sentence, not even feigning professionalism or unbiased at this point. Huh? Because of what, right? No shit. The press secretary for the president isn't unbiased. And guess what? Jen Psaki and Pierre, right? They were the most unprofessional fucking press secretaries we have ever seen. And now fucking Leavitt has to deal with leftist media constantly trying to attack her and go after her and make claims that she's not educated or some shit like that. So of course she's not going to be professional. When the media reporters asking questions to the press secretary aren't professional, I don't expect the press secretary to be professional. And of course the press secretary fucking isn't unbiased. They're the press secretary for the current administration. They're biased towards the administration. And the leftist media wants to continue to lie and lie and lie and fucking lie about everything. Right? So this is what they're talking about. This is why they're saying that it was unprofessional, unbiased. Last night, President Donald J. Trump highlighted many of the egregious examples of waste, fraud, and abuse funded by American taxpayers, including $8 million spent by the Biden administration for making mice transgender. The fake news losers at CNN immediately tried to fact check it, but President Trump was right as usual. Okay. The people at CNN, and notice how they're fucking they took a picture from CNN, but this is from Metro, right? They are the fake news. CNN fucking lies about everything. And they do try to fact check everything that conservatives say, but they literally fact check what conservatives say using their own biased sources, right? So they'll be like, "Oh, fact check. Donald Trump said it was transgender mice." But we released an article saying that it was transgenic mice. So therefore, he's wrong. I don't give a fuck what kind of mice it was. It could have been big mice. It could have been small mice. It could have been fucking knowing how to play Xbox or fucking PC mice. I don't care. Why the fuck is $8 million of taxpayer fucking money going to anything for fucking mice when Americans can't afford food? That's the point. This is why you're so out of touch on the left. We don't care what the fuck the reason is. It's waste. It's fucking waste. Period. That's the point. But because you guys want to do some dumbass fact check about what it is and then claim like you have the moral superiority. Well, guess what? The people who are morally right in this argument are the people who are trying to stop our money going to this dumb fucking shit. CNN, you're not right. And Metro, you're not right. It's not unprofessional. We're tired of your shit. We're tired of your shit if it's not evident. God damn. Fact, under the Biden administration, the National Institute of Health doled out millions of dollars in taxpayer funded grants for institutions across the country to perform transgender experiments on mice, right? That's true. No shit. Guess what? That's a thing. We experiment using other animals for various different diseases or social behaviors or something like that. They have tons of different studies involving fucking chimps or mice with a bunch of different social constructs, right? With a bunch of different social constructs, okay? That are correlative in human behavior because you know, as we're starting to find out, behavior's behavior. It kind of doesn't actually matter the species, right? But they also experiment on mice with fucking deadly diseases or like kinds of dysphoria and stuff like that to experiment on them and to see what conclusions they come up to or come out with, right? No shit. We do this. We do a lot of wasteful spending on a lot of dumbass experimentation. Okay? That's the point. I get it. You might think that experimentation is beneficial. It's not. We don't care. Maybe at a time where our federal government's not running a $2 trillion fucking deficit and we're not like $40 trillion in debt. Maybe then we can fucking experiment on mice. I don't give a fuck what the experimentation is. God damn, man. Now, last thing I'm fucking doing today because this stream has been so long and I'll just keep the other segment for something separate. How the U.S. economy went from booming to a recession scare in only 20 days. Analysis by Matt Egan, CNN. Well, last time I checked CNN, you came up with multiple fucking articles about a lot of different fucking cabinet picks by the Trump administration and how they're unqualified. So, Matt Egan, what are your qualifications for being able to determine the U.S. economy went from booming to a recession? Because it in fact did not, right? Just 20 days ago, the U.S. stock market was sitting at all-time highs. The U.S. economy appeared to be growing at a solid pace in a recession, and a recession was nowhere in sight. Wow. Man, 20 days ago? Shit. Last time I checked, 20 days ago, was almost in fact like already 20 days into the Trump administration, which means that the U.S. stock market sitting at all-time highs and the U.S. economy appeared to be growing at a solid pace and a recession was nowhere in sight, was because of Donald Trump. Okay? Now the R word is seemingly everywhere. No shit! Because the left are the ones pushing fears of a recession on the American people, which causes the American people to believe a recession is coming, which causes them to sell off their stocks, short stocks, stop spending their money because they're fearful of a recession, because the leftist media are the ones who keep telling them there's a recession, because they keep posting images of the fucking stock market. Let me tell y'all something. The stock market is not a good indicator for the U.S. economy. And right now, you're going to see reductions in price values, okay, of the stock market because people are selling off their stocks because the left is saying that there's a recession happening because they're showing images of the stock market fucking having its values reduced. right? You see all this red on the board? People see red. We're trained. We are trained, right? Naturally, right? Red is already a color that sends up alarm signals to human beings, period. Right? Red in nature is a very alarming color. That is why it's used as on stop signs and stoplights. Right? And then you are trained through society to recognize red as dangerous, right? Enemies in video games, right? Their names or their titles are highlighted in red. Like friendly is green, right? It's fucking everywhere. Red is deemed as bad, green is deemed as good. So when you see a board and it's listed all red, we're already societally trained to go, oh my God, this is bad. It's terrible. It's all red. It's all red. Red just shows that it's reduced. And of course it's going to reduce because now companies are starting to have to restructure to incorporate the use of fucking tariffs. Okay? Because either people are selling their stocks because those businesses are starting to restructure to come back to the United States, or they're selling their stocks because the companies are no longer going to be as profitable because there's higher tariff rates on them. No shit, right? That's the intent of the tariffs. It's to force domestic side manufacturing to help improve the fucking economy. All right? That's the point. You guys act like international trade has always been a thing, or that countries have always traded with each other. No, the fuck they haven't. For a majority of human history, every fucking society, every nation on planet Earth basically handled all of their manufacturing and all their needs domestically. Importing was used for extravagancies or things you simply can't get in that nation. Oh, like you want a certain type of food from a certain country? Well, obviously that doesn't exist in your country because you're not that other country, you're your country, so we import it and it costs more. But then they started outsource production to places like fucking India, Mexico, and China because they exploit fucking cheap. Mexico's more cheap labor, China's more slave labor, India's more cheap labor, right? Kind of deal. So they're the ones pushing the recession, and then like they're the ones pushing the recession, then claiming there's a recession, and then validating that there's a recession because of the claims they pushed about there being a recession that are causing a recession. How does that make sense? But this is what the left does. They create these fucking issues. They create these issues so that then they can spread. They start a narrative. Based off the narrative, they create the issues so then they can validate the narrative. And then they can use that as fucking kudos for they were right or something like that when they're the ones who caused it in the fucking first place. Leftists all across the US have done very organized sell-offs of certain stocks to hurt companies. And they've also done organized boycotts already of companies who have gotten rid of DEI programs in order to hurt their fucking bottom dollar. So when you see these stock prices going down, leftists are a big factor into why these stock prices are going down. And then they claim that there's a recession, but it's because of them. They're the ones fucking doing it. It's that plain and simple. It really is. Right? Why is Tesla stock going down? Maybe because the left is organizing fucking destruction of Tesla property and leftists are attacking Tesla vehicles and throwing Molotov cocktails through the windows of Tesla dealerships across the globe, not just in the United States. Then they're having fucking protests in Germany where they're flying swastikas and shit like that because the leftists are actually the fucking Nazis in Germany today, right? Like, let me tell y'all something about Nazis. Nazis were socialists. The only thing Nazis had in common with people on the right is that they were nationalists, right? Which is them being patriotic for their country. They put their country first. Everything else about the Nazis was fucking socialist. They were the Socialist Workers' Party, right? They believed in socialism. They structured their government and their country after socialism. Leftists are the ones who want to structure their government and their country after socialism. The only thing leftists don't have in common with Nazis, right, is that they fucking don't like the country that they live in. They're not patriotic. That's it. Everything else, their ideologies, their practices, all align with Nazis. Leftists in Germany are Nazis, and they're openly flying fucking swastikas and stuff like that to try to say that Elon Musk is the Nazi. So of course Tesla stock is dropping because people are like, oh my God, I got to sell my. It starts off with some people selling their Tesla stock, right? Because liberals will buy up a bunch of stock. They'll artificially increase the price of the stock. Then they'll start to sell it all at once so that one, they can make money. They're shorting the stock. And then also they can trigger people to be fearful of a stock drop and people don't want to lose their money. So then they sell their stocks, which then it becomes a domino effect. That's the issue with the stock market, right? They're the ones causing it. They're like, oh my God, Elon Musk is so terrible. That's why his stocks are collapsing. No, it's because y'all are terrible people and intentionally trying to collapse his stocks. That's why his stocks are fucking collapsing. It's that plain and simple. But you know what? That's all I fucking have, right? That is all I have today for y'all. Tomorrow we're going to go over the current Democrat impeachment attempt of Donald Trump, because we're going to debunk everything line by line, and I'm just going to impose on y'all a little bit of my common sense, all right? Because common sense goes a long fucking way. You know, all I can say is stay safe out there, guys. Leftists are fucking crazy. They're attacking people. They're shooting people. They're shooting at people in Tesla trucks. They're attacking people in Tesla trucks or Tesla vehicles. They're lighting them on fire, right? Which is insane, right? Because they're destroying the environment, which they claim to be all about because they're climate activists, right? And climate change and all that kind of stuff, while setting fires to lithium batteries, right? Causing lithium batteries to explode and catch on fire. Yeah, because that's great for the environment, right, leftists? That's all I got. That's all I got for y'all. All right. You know, and as we say, truth, reality, and common sense. If you have one, you'll have the other two. And I highly recommend starting with common sense. I've been your host, Joseph Rose. This is the Common Sense Pros and Cons podcast. Share it with a friend. All right. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll catch all of you in the next stream.